One indication that there has been a casualty of some sort would be if there were EMS vehicles on scene. Now, generally speaking, they will call in EMS as just a precautionary measure, just in case. But if there happens to be an EMS vehicle, then that's a good determination that someone has been injured. I've not seen any pictures of an EMS vehicle being there. That doesn't mean there isn't one, because pictures tend to not show the whole picture, believe it or not. And we'll certainly keep you updated on that here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. And we're always here at hotnewstalkradio.com as well. Just to clarify, though, what happened initially was we got reports that there was shots fired at the Naval Reserve Center. That was the initial report. And that's quickly devolved into being a shot fired. And then that quickly devolved again into being an auditory witness of something which sounded like a gunshot being fired. Now, there is a lot of heightened tension in that area because this is the exact same area where there was a terrorist attack on July the 16th. So there's a lot of tension going on in that area already. Now, fortunately, the police station is basically right next to the Naval Reserve Center. If you're familiar with the Amnicola Highway area, you know that already. So the police were able to respond very quickly within, I would say, 10 minutes almost of the call happening. Fred Fletcher, the police chief in Chattanooga, said that they sent everyone. That was his statement. I'm not sure how much in jest that statement was, but he said they sent everyone to the Naval Reserve Center. Now, if you're just tuning in, I wouldn't panic, because so far as we know, there's not been any casualty, and we are not clear if there has been a shooting or not. The police chief responded to a shooting and then quickly came out with a statement on the ground, which he gave to WWTVC here in Chattanooga, saying that it was actually a shot fired and it was an auditory witness, meaning that someone heard what sounded like a gunshot. And the call did come from the Naval Reserve Center, as far as we can tell. So that would be why they responded so quickly. The Naval Reserve Center obviously is a prime target for any sort of attack right now, because it just was the target of an attack just a few months ago, which we covered extensively here on Hot News Talk Radio, of course. So we'll keep you updated on that situation here on Hot News Talk Radio. If anything else comes out, we will certainly let you know right here on Hot News Talk Radio. We've got our finger on the pulse of all the different news sources coming out, and we are your news source on the radio here at Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com. We currently have a correspondent on the ground right now to make sure that nothing else happens. And if something else does happen, he'll keep us updated right here on Hot News Talk Radio. So be sure to keep it tuned here, and we'll certainly let you know here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and we're always here at hotnewstalkradio.com as well. If you're just stepping out of your car, you can get us on your smartphone. Just get the TuneIn Radio app for your smartphone, and then search for Hot News Talk Radio, and you can get us streaming there as well. That's the way I usually listen, is on the smartphone, because it's actually not great weather right now. Now, the funny thing about AM, though, is that cloud cover tends to be pretty good for AM. So right now, you're probably picking us up farther away than you normally would, because we have quite a bit of cloud cover. And by the way, I should let you know, just because we're doing news for a little bit now, I'll just keep you updated on the weather too. Right now, it's a beautiful Wednesday, and the temperature is 71 here in the Chattanooga area, and it's going to be getting down into the 60s tonight. Low is 62, and it's actually staying pretty steady throughout the rest of the day. It's going to be in the 70s, going to dip down into the mid-60s for tonight and tomorrow, and it's really going to be staying there for quite a while. We're not expecting a whole lot of rain. You may see some sprinkling, but getting into tomorrow, we are expecting more rain on Thursday and Friday, thunder showers, and Saturday more rain as well. So our weekend is going to be quite wet. That's your weather update from us here at the Weather Center at Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com. If you liked my news delivery, be sure to listen to us at 5, where, because I am the news director, I do the news at 5, and that's always fun. I really enjoy doing it, and it's quite a thrill, I got to say, because the news is something that it requires so much connectivity. You know, in the 21st century, it's actually almost harder to do the news than it may have been in the 20th century, because back then you had the telegraph wire and you had the news ticker and you got the info from the AP and you reported it, and that was it. And things have gotten a lot more complicated now because we have many different sources which we can access instantaneously. We got video from the ground from many different sources down at Amnicola. We were getting video streams from people down there, and it was great stuff. But that's a lot to sort through for one guy, who happens to be me. And I love doing it, so that makes it a joy for me. But it's certainly it's an interesting job, to say the least. Now, fortunately, one of the ways that I get my kicks is I do this show, which is Digital Drive here on Hot News Talk Radio. Following me, of course, is Clutch of Keon Rose. He is our resident sports expert here at Hot News Talk Radio. He lets us know about all the different sports happenings. Apparently, there's something about playoffs or something and picks and people who may or may not be playing in some game. I don't know. If you know, then you should listen to Clutch with Keon Rose here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com. I am the least sports savvy person on the planet, most likely. I know less about sports than I do about basically anything else, I guess. Sports is one of those areas where if there was like a diagram, like a triangular diagram, there would be one corner which would be sports, and it would be way inverted to the point where it's pointing out the other direction. We've made a crown shape now. That's how bad I am at sports. I do know, though, that lacrosse is a sport and that people happen to play it at Macaulay because I've seen them do it. So 0.1 for me, I guess. Touchdown for me. 4 points, I think. I don't know. This is Digital Drive here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and we're always here at hotnewstalkradio.com. Also, now this wonderful opinion piece I saw on The Verge was about should Google start manufacturing its own hardware? That's an interesting concept. Now, keep in mind, Google's Nexus is sort of Google's own hardware, but should Google become sort of like an Apple and push out standard Google models of Android phones, which we can point to as being the optimum Android experience? Now, we already have, we've already got the Nexus phones, which are pretty much the primo Android experience. You can't get much better than the Nexus phones when it comes to your Android experience, but it's still not like the Android phone. There's not really any phone we can point to because there's still really good smartphones out there, which are, well, they're really good Android experiences, especially for lower prices. So does Google have, say, the higher end phone, the lower end phone, the medium range phone? It doesn't. And that's sort of odd about that's sort of the odd thing about Google right now. Mossberg is the guy who put out the opinion piece for The Verge. I think is really good. His opinion is that it's time for Google to make its own hardware. Because again, Google does not have manufacturing houses. Google used to own Motorola for a little while there, but that sort of fell apart. So there's a brand of phones, he says, and tablets commissioned by the company starting in 2010, but it's made by, well, not Google. They're not huge sellers either, but they are to show the world what the best of the Android operating system is. And that's really great, but they are not made by Google. It's actually two different models from LG and Huawei, or however you say it, a Chinese manufacturer. So while the software firm, Google, works closely on the resulting product, it does not have the full control which you might expect out of, say, Apple or Microsoft over the Surface. Now, Microsoft owns Nokia, or owned Nokia for a little while there, and that was a great move for Microsoft to put out Windows phones. The Nokia Lumia was a really good phone, but it ran Windows Phone Mobile 7, whatever the heck it was, and that was the killer for that phone because it's Microsoft, it's Windows. That's not cool. Microsoft and Windows are not cool. As much as perhaps they want to market themselves to be cool, it's not cool. There's not really anything cool about Windows, at least with Macs, and I'm not a Mac fan by any means, but at least with Macs, they look kind of cool. Like the hardware looks cool. The software looks cool, might not be cool, but it looks cool. And the stigma around owning an Apple device is you are cool. You know, you own an Apple device, you are cool. That's the stigma. But with, say, a Windows laptop, it's just function. It's very Soviet, sort of. That's how I like to think of Windows devices, is very Soviet. Now, I don't mean that in the bad way. I mean that in the just sort of functional, works, no frills, Microsoft, very corporate. And that's okay if you like that, and I tend to, but it's not like cool in the modern sense of cool. And that kind of hurts Microsoft, honestly. Microsoft's trying this new rebranding thing. I don't think it works very well. In fact, I don't like it at all, but I'm really into the old like 90s aesthetic anyway, so I'm obviously going to hate it. Speaking of things to hate, by the way, did you see the new change which Twitter made? I hope you did. I'm sorry if you did, but you should have by now if you're on Twitter. Twitter is following in the footsteps, of course, of Facebook. Forgot the name. I almost said Google Plus. Heaven forbid. Following in the footsteps of Facebook, and now we have like instead of favorites. And that kills any sort of brand identity with Twitter, as far as I'm concerned. Next, they'll call followers something else. They'll call it liked pages, probably, and they'll change your followers to friends, and everything will be terrible. Everything is terrible anyway, but now it'll be terrible-ler. It'll be worse. And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous that Twitter would make this change. And I hate this change that Twitter has made. I get unreasonably upset about this new change which Twitter has made, which is changing it to the like thing. It's even got a fun little animation when you hit the heart on the Twitter app. I don't know if it does it on the desktop app. I haven't looked at it, but when you hit the heart on the Twitter app, it has a fun little animation. I mean, it looks nice, but I hate it. It's kind of like Google's new logo. I hate it so much. It's not like it's subjectively or objectively bad. There's not really anything you can point at with the Google logo and say, look, it's terrible. I just hate it. And it's just, I don't like it. It's like imagine, okay, think of it this way. Starbucks is an easily recognizable brand. Everyone recognizes the Starbucks mermaid. When anyone sees the Starbucks mermaid, everyone recognizes it. And it's not a cluttered design. It is a good design, and it's an easily recognizable design. It doesn't need to be any simpler than it is, and it doesn't need to be any more complicated than it is. It's just good, and it works. Now, it's had some revisions over the years, but imagine if suddenly Starbucks said, we are releasing a new logo for the Starbucks brand, and it's just this flat aquamarine mermaid that's very minimalistic. It's just flat, and it's designed by someone's nephew who took a graphic design course at some state college and thinks he's really cool. And the CEO of Starbucks saw it and said, that's really good. We're changing the logo. You would hate that, probably. Everyone who went to Starbucks would hate it. Or, because Starbucks people are hipsters, they'd say, oh, look at this flat, new, great design. Because they're a bunch of hipsters in the worst possible way. I'm so hipster that I hate hipsters. That's how hipster I am. I'm so hipster that I'm on the verge of every new movement, and to the point where I'm already cool. I'm so cool that I transcend cool, where I'm actually on a new plane of coolness that's totally inaccessible to anyone who is not on my level. So if you're not on my level, get on my level, please, because I'm tired of you being on the level you're on. No, I jest, obviously. But no, it drives me nuts, this whole simplification thing that people keep doing. And I know why we do it. I can explain away easily why we do it. Because these brands are not uniquely American. And I don't mean that like, America the best, look at us, we're America, we make the best stuff. I don't mean it that way. I mean, we're looking at brands which need to be international. And to be international, these brands have to not be linguistic. Okay, so Microsoft Windows has to be a simple, easily recognizable design, 4 squares, and there it is. It's Microsoft, it's Windows, it's easily recognizable. We all recognize it when we look at it. It's just Microsoft, and there's no frills, there's no anything. It just is Microsoft, and it's nice internationally, but for us who, we've been used to the Microsoft logo, especially the Windows logo being the Windows logo forever. And it's gone through design changes. I get that. And it's probably going to go through a lot more revisions, but I still don't like it. I didn't mind the Windows 7 logo, which was just a variation on the Windows XP logo. And then the Windows 8 one came out, and I hated it so much because it was just flat and boring. 4 white squares. That's so almost literally white bread. Honestly, it's just, I hate it so much. It seriously looks like 4 slices of white bread, and it's so boring. I hate it so much. It takes all the identity out of Microsoft as a brand, which didn't have a whole lot anyway. And at least Apple hasn't changed too much from what Apple was. I actually like the old Apple logo, the rainbow one. I thought it was a good logo. Much better than the previous Apple logo, which was Isaac Newton sitting beneath an apple tree with an apple about to fall on his head, like the old story goes, how he discovered gravity, which is not true. But still, it's I hate it so much, and I don't know why. All these different companies keep making all these revisions, and it's not like I can expect any company to continue to be the same thing forever. That's a ridiculous hope. And that's a ridiculous goal, is to hope that all these companies are going to remain the same companies for the rest of forever. That's never going to happen. I get it. But I still hate it when ridiculous changes happen. And I don't know, man. It's a good thing I'm not a graphic designer, I guess, because everything would have like palm trees and everything would be like marble statues everywhere. So I guess it's a good thing that I'm not a graphic designer. It's a really good thing I'm not a graphic designer. I hate the simplification thing so much. And it's not like we're a simpler people now than we were before, because we're really not. If anything, things are a lot more complicated, honestly, than they were before. But I don't know, man. It drives me nuts, and I hate it so much. And I don't know. It's not worth my time to talk about, I guess. But that's my vent for the day. But the point was, possibly it's time for Google to start making its own hardware. Would that be a good move? I don't know. Google could make its own hardware if, this is the big if Google didn't mandate that all other manufacturers stop making Google hardware, because the whole point of Android almost is the diversity of the ecosystem of Android. Now, I know that there's some non-benefit to that, where we're having a lot of disparity between distributions, where you have one Android phone that can do this, but another Android phone can't, and there's not really a whole lot of good reason for it other than software fixes, which Lenovo won't put out. But I understand the want for a unified platform when it comes to Android, but I'm not sure if that's the best idea in terms of sales for Google. Google knows what's best for Google, I assume. Maybe not when it comes to design, but we'll have to wait and see. I don't know. We're going to get into some heavier topics coming up next, though, so don't worry. We're not going to keep talking about design all day. As much as I want to, we're not going to talk about design all day. And by the way, this show is, of course, brought to you by Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds, so be sure to go to Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds if you got some gold, which you want to get off your hands, which I know all of us do. You got some gold you want to get off your hands, go to Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds and be sure to check that out. And he's a proud sponsor of us here at Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com as well. Go to Twitter, see all of our tweets. We got live reports from the ground at M. Nicola, where there were reports of shots fired at the Naval Reserve Center near Chat State. We'll keep you updated on that situation right here on Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240. And we're always here at hotnewstalkradio.com as well.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing about
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Sky Aerial Services uses advanced drone technology to give you a better perspective and depth of your property and project. We offer aerial photography and video for your business, farm, home, or advertising campaigns, as well as editing services to complete the experience. Call us at 423-521-0284 and see how we can help you tell your story about your business, property, or project. We work with real estate professionals, both commercial and residential, developers, engineer inspectors, surveyors, ad agencies, auto and boat dealers, mapping services, insurance inspectors, corporate marketing, charity events, weddings, and photographers. Our consultation is free. Call 423-521-0284. That's 423-521-0284, or visit our website, skyaerialservices.com. Sky Aerial Services. The sky is our limit.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brainerd Road and in Soddy Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's E.J. Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Soddy Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Soddy Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. Mark your calendars right now, because my guest this week is none other than one of the leading GOP presidential contenders, neurosurgeon Dr. Ben Carson. Don't miss a revealing conversation with candidate Ben Carson this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
President Obama makes Jimmy Carter look like Napoleon Bonaparte. We have a president that leads from behind, and when America doesn't lead, bad things happen.
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm David Tulis, inviting you to make the move with me 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. The David Tulis Show, featuring Nooganomics.com for Chattanooga and beyond. 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Police say they've been searching for answers since the death of Illinois Police Lieutenant Joseph Glinowitz 2 months ago. Now they have them.
This extensive investigation has concluded with an overwhelming amount of evidence that Glinowitz's death was a carefully staged suicide.
Lake County Major Crime Task Force Commander George Falenko, the death kicked off a manhunt for the suspects. Authorities saying Glinowitz embezzled money from a youth program for years. New Hampshire's first in the nation presidential primary already drawing candidate filings. Democrat Governor Martin O'Malley and Donald Trump, who's slamming his GOP competition.
We have to take our jobs back from China, Japan, Mexico, all these places that have them. And Ben Carson is not equipped to do that. That I can tell you.
And the Oklahoma woman accused of deliberately driving into a crowd at homecoming charged with 4 counts of second-degree murder. Fox News, we report.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
So the Naval Reserve Center, there was a call of a shot fired, singular shot fired, as I struggled to put on my headphones, singular shot fired at the Naval Reserve Center. Presently, the police chief says that there is no active shooter. We got report that there is still about 30 police cars over there at the Naval Reserve Center. Apparently a SWAT vehicle left already, but SWAT did respond, apparently. So far, we don't have a suspect info. There's no victims so far. Police responded because the call came from the Reserve Center. They responded very overzealously, perhaps. There was a report of a shot, singular, fired near the Reserve Center. There's no reports of any bodily harm coming to anyone so far. There were no visual witnesses. There's a report of a sound of what sounded like a gunshot. And CPD tweeted that there's no active shooter. But we'll keep you updated on that here on Hot News Talk Radio and hotnewstalkradio.com as well. Of course, so far, they are apparently searching the river near the river park. So there's apparently some sort of search going on in the woods and in the river near the river park. Now, we're not sure if this is connected. It almost certainly is. But so far, that's what we've got. And we have a correspondent on the ground right now who's going to bring us updates throughout the hour. And we'll keep you updated on that, of course, here on Hot News Talk Radio and hotnewstalkradio.com. They are presently searching the river. The police are. CPD tweeted that there's no active shooter. CPD has not done anything yet to contradict that claim. And there's not been a revision to that claim so far. But again, as our correspondent pointed out, no active shooter does not mean there was never a shooter. If the shooter's dead, then he's not active. So that's worth noting. But we'll keep you updated on the situation right here on Hot News Talk Radio. And of course, we're always here at hotnewstalkradio.com. Tesla, auto manufacturer, manufactures lithium-ion battery-powered electric cars. Very cool stuff. Kind of has a problem, actually. Tesla cars have an autopilot feature, which does what you would expect. It drives you around autonomously, sort of, kind of. You still have to pay attention. That's worth noting. Please pay attention. But Tesla is now going to be restricting autopilot because people keep doing dumb stuff. which is not surprising. People always do dumb things, but now people are doing dumber things, the dumbest things, basically. During a quarterly financial call, Tesla CEO Elon Musk, noted madman and Tony Stark wannabe, has revealed some interesting details about the future of the Model S autopilot feature. Most notably, Musk said that additional constraints will be added to the activation of autopilot to minimize the possibility of people doing crazy things. Currently, the idea behind autopilot is you're going 70 down the interstate. It's a long-haul drive to, say, Knoxville from Catoosa County, which I do pretty regularly to visit friends. And you don't want to keep, it's a long drive. And you don't want to fall asleep or anything, but maybe you want to change channels on the radio or something. So you turn on autopilot and it steers for you and make sure you don't crash into anything while you adjust the radio. Now, that's a much safer way of doing it than, say, keeping one hand on the steering wheel, messing around with the radio, and potentially swerving off the edge of a cliff and down into Maryville below. Don't want to do that. So Musk said that around 40,000 Model S's currently have autopilot available to them. He said that those 40,000 cars are logging about 1 million miles of driving a day. Not bad. But he didn't clarify if that was the total number of miles driven or the number of autopiloted miles driven. So there's that total miles or autopiloted miles, not clear. In any case, according to Ars Technica, Musk said that the early data is very positive, saying we're very aware of many accidents that were prevented by autopilot and not aware of any that were caused by autopilot. Still, Musk is still being kind of coy about some of the data about autopilot, saying he was not pleased with some fairly crazy videos on YouTube saying this is not good. We will still be putting some additional constraints on when autopilot can be activated to minimize the possibility of people doing crazy things. Musk did not say when those constraints would arrive, but considering autopilot is still beta tested, we'd expect over-the-air software updates sooner rather than later. So keep in mind, too, that this is not meant to be autopilot. It's meant to be autopilot in the sense that turn it on and possibly you won't crash into something if you, say, have to put something in your cup holder or you need to get something out of your glove box while you're traveling down the road, got to answer a phone call, whatever. Still should not text and drive. I would not advocate that because I know people who have gotten into bad accidents due to texting while driving. Not someone else texting while driving. The individuals I happen to know were texting while driving and then smashed into something. So please don't do that. But nevertheless, you could technically potentially do that while you are in autopilot. I wouldn't recommend it, but I guess technically you could. Musk declined to say what the additional autopilot activation constraints might be. Most other cars with semi-self-driving features usually require that your hands stay on the steering wheel, deactivating if you remove your hands. Tesla's autopilot will continue to automatically steer if you remove your hands. Tesla suggests that drivers keep their hands on the steering wheel while enabling autopilot, but it's not currently enforced in software, which might change after Musk comments today. It's not clear if there are sensors in the steering wheel. At least I'm not aware. There might be, but still, it's really a cool it's a cool feature. But I'm not sure if it's going to take off widespread or not. I kind of hope so, but we don't know. And the whole idea of an automatic driving feature on a car is really nice because I know people who drive a really long distance regularly in a passenger car, and it's annoying, honestly. And I've driven very long distance up to another country. It was like a 26-hour total drive. We drove in shifts, but still, autopilot would have been really nice for some of those long-haul drives. But it's a nice technology, but I'm a little bit worried about what it might lead to. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose, but I don't know. The Tesla CEO said that he was aware of some users experiencing errors with autopilot, but did downplay the significance, saying it was described as a beta release. The system will learn over time and will get better, and that's exactly what it's doing. It will start to feel quite refined within a couple of months. There are plenty of videos of autopilot errors on the web. They mostly seem to involve the Model S getting confused and lurching to one side, even on straight roads. Finally, Musk shifted gears to talk about the future of autopilot on autonomous cars, saying, if you're not part of the autopilot beta test and didn't add the autopilot package when buying your Model S, it's in the coming months, you will be able to do an in-app purchase to enable autopilot features, which costs about $3,000. More generally, Musk reiterated his vision for the future, saying all cars will be fully autonomous in the long term. I think it'll be quite unusual to see new cars which don't have full autonomy in the 15 to 20 year time frame. For Tesla, it will be a lot sooner than that. Any cars which are being made that don't have autonomy will have negative value. Obviously, Elon Musk has an interesting view for the future. Now, what his view is not really human-based, I suppose. It's not really based on you driving your car. It's more based on your car driving you around. And so you have a robot chauffeur, to put it in those terms. Remember the movie Total Recall, where there was that robot taxi driver? That's possibly the future which Elon Musk is hoping for and really is helping to build with the Model S. Tesla is one of those unique cases where he's not just speculating, he's building. And that's, to his favor, that's a really unique position for him. It's at least it's a rare position. I wouldn't say unique because there are other people who did that, like Steve Jobs, but and of course Wozniak and Gates and all sorts of other people. But he is in a very rare position where not only does he have a view for the future, he's building that view for the future. He is actively working on creating that future he wishes to see. He's working with SpaceX. He's got his own car company, Tesla, and he used to work for PayPal back in the day, which again changed how we spent money online. He's building the future. Elon Musk is, and he has a view as well for public transport, like the Hyperloop, it's currently being built. It's a passenger vehicle which is in a vacuum, which travels at a high rate of speed, possibly supersonically, and gets you from point A to point B very quickly, faster than you could travel on even an airplane potentially. So it's a fascinating view for the future, which Elon Musk has, and again, he's building it. I mean, that's crazy. This guy could just build the future if he wants to. Which leads me to something that I wanted to talk about, actually, which was the progression of technology. Technology has progressed faster in the last 200 years than possibly it has even in all of history, potentially. Technology has progressed so much in the last 200 years. We have so many new materials. We have so many new innovations, which we simply did not have before. In the last 200 years, so many things have changed to the point where 200 years ago is not even recognizable when it comes to compared to today, which was really not the case 200 years ago. Compare 200 years ago to 200 years before that, and it wasn't that different. It was different, but it wasn't that different. Someone from, say, 1600 could go to 1700 and still function and be a little bit confused about some things, but could still function. Horses were still the main mode of transport for your average individual. Ships were still basically the same. Weaponry was almost the same. And there were new innovations, yes, but weaponry was still very similar in 1700 as compared to 1600. You could figure it out pretty quickly. That's not the case going from, say, 1900 to 2000, where things are crazily different. Repeating arms are the standard for everyone. Basically, everyone has access now to a repeating arm that's magazine loaded and is semi-automatic, and that was not the case in 1900 at all. So small arms had changed completely. Aircraft is now a thing, whereas in 1900 it really wasn't. Aircraft was thought of, it was experimental, but it was not realized for the everyday man. In 2000, everyone has access to air travel for actually very inexpensive prices. And in 1900, the automobile is not prevalent. The horseless carriage, as it was called then, is not really a consumer product. It's not considered a consumer product like it is today, where everyone has one. In 1900, not everyone had a car. And that's, again, a rather bizarre thought, where horses were still a relatively widely used mode of travel. And again, that's a bizarre thought, but that is how it was in 1900. So again, compare 1900 to 2000, where things are so different that it's almost like another planet. Technology has progressed in so many different ways, never minding information technology. Go from 1900, where even radio was not a thing yet that was widely used. In 1900, FM was not in existence. AM was experimental at best. Marconi had not come out with FM. He had not been experimenting with radio in a way that we're used to. In fact, electric lighting even was a new concept in 1900. That's very bizarre to think about. In fact, electricity, the electrical grid, is still a relatively new concept. The best mode of communication was the telegram. And the telegraph was still high tech. in 1900 compared to what we have today. And still it's, or not compared to what we have today. The telegraph was still one of the best modes of communication back then. In fact, telephone switching, magnetic switches, I don't think were even invented yet. The telephone is still a brand new technology, and wireless communication is essentially unheard of by 1900. But then again, compare 1900 to just 100 years in the future, which is not very long in the wide scale of things. 100 years in the future to 2000, how far we had come. Can you imagine? We've landed people on the moon by the year 2000. There are people in the International Space Station by the year 2000. Think about that compared to 1900, how fast we moved. And even from 1900 up to 1960 or 1950, how far things had changed. 1900 to 1950, that's a crazy amount of change in just a short amount of time. We don't really think about that a lot. And we don't think about how far we've come in just the last 100 years. 100 years ago today, November the 4th, 1915. How different are things now than they were on November the 4th, 1915? Things have changed drastically. We've gone through now 2 world wars. We are now in another war on terror. The Cold War has happened and is come and gone. The whole Soviet Union has come and gone. And many new countries now exist. And there is now, the Middle East is entirely different than it was back then. Even Europe is entirely different than what it was in 1915. Everything is different than it was compared to 100 years ago. And so we have come so far, even the last 50 years, changed the scale to 50 years. And things have still changed so drastically. 1965, November the 4th, 1965, how different were things back then? Crazily different. I can't even count the ways how things are different now than they were in 1965. It's almost crazy. Someone who had traveled in the future from 1965 to the present day would go insane with all the different technological changes that we have gone through. And we don't really notice it that much when it's a gradual change. Like even from when I was born, 1995 to today, things have changed so much. Even graphic design has changed in huge ways. 1995 to 2015, almost 16 now, the year I was born to now, things have changed in so many ways that they're almost incalculable. More data has been created than had been created in all of history. Think about that. More photographs are taken every day than had been taken every day in history from the beginning of time up until the mid-90s. How crazy is that? We are constantly setting records we don't even know we're setting. We live in really forward times, actually. We live in a very rare time in history where we can point to now and say, this is a time of change. We can point to today and say, this is a time where things are rapidly changing in a way that is completely different from any other time in history, as far as we know. We live in such an interesting time in history. And I guess I like to point that out rather regularly because we like to focus on the bad and how awful things are. And yeah, things are pretty bad sometimes and things are pretty awful sometimes, but yet still, it's actually not nearly as bad as we like to think sometimes. Because we think that, well, there's some giant threat that could kill us tomorrow. That's always the case and has been throughout history. And we think that, well, look how bad we have it here. This or that's happening. It's still, honestly, we're relatively safe compared to a lot of other places, especially here in the U.S. We are relatively safe and things are not nearly as bad as we like to think that they are. We live in relative comfort compared to a lot of other places in the world. We are very fortunate to live where we do. And I would say we're very blessed to live where we do and to live the way which we do. Even for the poorest people in America are still living in more comfort than a lot of other people across the world. And that's really a blessing, I guess. It's an amazing thing. And it's an amazing time in which we live. Something else that I thought is kind of funny is our money system. Our money system has been changed so completely by technology that it's almost not recognizable compared to how it was back in the 60s. Now purchases are easily made with just little pieces of plastic, which represent money that doesn't really physically exist. And that's such a weird concept. Again, it's such a bizarre thing where this concept is not really new. It's not unique to today, but it's manifested itself in such a strange way that is, again, totally different from how things were 50 years ago. Yeah, there was such a thing as the credit card, but it didn't work the way that it does now. In 1960, you could not have something shipped to your door the next day, which you ordered from an online catalog. It did not work that way. You had to either call up the place, you had to ship money over to them, mail a check, mail cash, whatever. That was how it worked back then. And we take that so for granted nowadays, where we can make a purchase just by tapping a button on a screen. We think about self-checkouts now at stores, where that's, again, a crazily new concept. And it's, I mean, the barcode as we know it today didn't even exist 50 years ago. So things have changed so drastically that we can't even count the ways. But the funny thing, too, about our money system is inflation, which is something I was talking about with Keon, actually, yesterday. He does a show here on Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch of Keon Rose, where he talks about sports. He's our resident sports expert. He knows so much about sports that it's actually rather shocking. But his show is Clutch of Keon Rose here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and he's always on hotnewstalkradio.com as well. Now, I was just talking about inflation with Keon yesterday, and inflation rates and how much our money has been devalued, I guess. The dollar is kind of a funny thing, because think about the word dollar. What does it mean anyway? What is a dollar? We don't really think about definitions too much, and perhaps we should get back to it. But what is the definition of a dollar? It's sort of changed, I guess, over the last few years, but really it still remains the same. A dollar, I type it out real quick so I make sure I'm accurate. A dollar is actually a unit of measurement for weight, believe it or not. Not just say like a dollar is worth this much. A dollar is actually worth something in gold. It's a very specifically measured unit of gold. And that's not at all the case now, but that was how we measured our units of currency. It was in gold. It was a dollar of gold, or a gold dollar, or a silver dollar. And it's weird to think about, but that's, again, how it was. And that's changed completely. It's completely changed. But again, that's how it was. So gold was a specific unit, or dollar was a specific unit of gold in measurement. So it had a very specific worth. You could easily point to the worth of the dollar based on the value of gold. It's very easily pointed to. Nowadays, it's based on confidence and futures and stocks and bonds, all sorts of different things determine the value of the dollar. The value of the dollar is such a fickle thing nowadays, it may as well not even have a value. It's basically valued in what they tell you it's valued in, which is almost better than what it actually is valued. It's ridiculous. And if you look at the dollar inflation rates, especially compared to, say, the year 1963, where it's changed so drastically that it's, again, almost irrecognizable. It's not recognizable. If you say 1913 is the default here, the dollar in 1913, $20 in 1913, today, $480.70, 2,303.5% inflation. But the thing is, if you had, say, a dollar bill from the year 1913, you could spend it for exactly $1 today dollars at a store. And that's so crazy to me that you can have paper dollars, which are still, transferable, that are worth less every single year. You're essentially being robbed every single year of the value of your dollar. And that's such a crazy concept, where you can have a paper dollar. I have a paper dollar on me right now. I have many of them, actually. A paper dollar on me right now that tomorrow is not worth as much. And the next year is worth even less than that. And the year after that is worth less and less and less and less. And the cycle continues and is going to continue. And it's such a crazy concept that a piece of paper which we hold in our hands, which represents some value somewhere, is worth less. It's exchanged for less than it was before. Let's even compare the year I was born. 1995, how much was $20 worth in 1995 compared to today? Okay, in 1995, a $20 bill, which I might have from 1995, today is worth $31.23. Now, that doesn't seem like a whole lot, but again, that's in the space of 20 years. $20 is now worth about $10 less, about $11.23 less. The current rate of inflation, 56.1% inflated. How crazy is that? Very. It's worth half as much now as it was before, a little over half as much as it was before. That's such an insane concept, and that's how messed up our money system is, and it's just going to continue getting worse. So that really is the bad thing. That's the big boogeyman, is the worth of our dollar. We talk about ISIS and we talk about all these different financial threats, but really the big thing is the worth of the dollar, which is not much anymore. And it's going to continue to be worth less and less and less as time goes by. That's the boogeyman. That's what needs to be fixed. Not, well, look at our defense spending. Look at our spending on this and that and this and that. Money comes out of nowhere nowadays. I mean, money is essentially infinite now, and not in a good way. It's not like, oh, look, I have infinite resources. No, I can just make more money. I'll add a zero on a computer, and now I suddenly have more money, and the dollar is now worth less. That's our money system today. It's so fickle. It's amazing it still exists. Clutcher Keon Rose is coming up next here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode.